Welcome to From the VC's Bookshelf, a podcast from TBR, the College System of Tennessee, the state's largest higher education system. In this series, we examine how we might re-envision the work we do and how we work together as we move into a post-pandemic world. Please join our host, Dr. Heidi Leming, Vice Chancellor for Student Success, as she leads a live discussion with industry experts and leaders throughout our system.
The Way of Tea and Justice by Becca Stevens is the featured book for our Fall 2025 podcast series. Tea is a great metaphor for how men and women alike not only reflect on their life experiences, but how we move forward in spite of hardships. It's also a global drink that connects everyone together, even though there are many differences. Tea comes from the same plant, but factors such as how it's processed, where it grows, and its growing conditions combine to provide a variety of teas that differ in taste, smell, and sight. Author Becca Stevens makes the argument that when one thinks about how tea is served, the intention is the essential element. As such, throughout the book, not only is the historical perspective on tea and how it influences culture and society discussed, but also how the individual interacts with tea as a form of reflection and meditation, and that's brought forward as a central element. So we're going to do something a bit different in this series. First, I'm honoring the women leaders in TBR by using the metaphor of tea to reflect on life challenges, lessons, triumphs, and yes, I'm going to be sitting down with each of my interviews with a cup of tea. We'll feature a unique variety of tea each time. I'll also ask the interviewees to bring their own teacup that has its own story that can be shared with our listeners. So in this activity of drinking tea together, we're going to describe the differences in the tea, the personal stories and reflections of the TBR women featured in this series. So those of you that are tuning into our podcast for the first time in this series, I would encourage you to check out the first in the series where I give a little bit more information about the author, Becca Stevens, and her founding of Thistle Farms in Nashville, which is premise behind this book. I won't do that in this particular podcast, so I encourage you to check that out. But I do want to share today, I am thrilled to be sitting with Danni Varlan, who is one of our regents on our board. And Danni was appointed to the Tennessee Board of Regents in September 29, 2010. And she represents the 2nd Congressional District, where she has served for 15 years. In 2023, Varlan retired from her final and favorite job as the grant writer, major gifts, and estate planning officer at East Tennessee Children's Hospital in Knoxville. She currently serves her community in many capacities, including the board of directors of the Panhellenic National Scholarship Foundation, Relationship Builders, and commitments to her beloved St. George Greek Orthodox Church. Varlan has a Bachelor of Arts in English from Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia, and is married to United States District Court Judge Tom Varlan. They share 4 grown children and 6 grandchildren. So happy to have you sitting with me today, Danni. Thank you.
Well, it is an honor to be here, and I've read the book and so excited to get to talk about it.
When I was driving here to do the podcast today, I was also reminded about the fact that many years ago, I started doing a book club in the system, and you were one of the early adopters, so to speak, of participating in our book club. And this is an outgrowth of that initial book club. COVID kind of affected our ability to do the book club, and so we moved to a podcast after that. And so thanks also for being like this devoted book club member, too, for all these years.
I do love to read, and I like to talk about what I've read. I'm in a book club. I've been in different book clubs. The one I'm in now, I just love it. It is mostly female pediatric doctors of some sort, and we actually talk about the books. I've been in a few that there wasn't much book discussion, so now that I'm getting older and older, I'll gravitate toward the actual book club.
Yeah. So describe for our listeners your teacup that you brought and the story behind your teacup.
This was so much fun to get to select the teacup I wanted to bring today. I received this teacup 40 years ago as a wedding gift. It is a very nice wedding disc. This is a Limoges China teacup and saucer, which
is
I
beautiful.
don't own anything like that. But what makes me like it, I wouldn't know the difference between Limoges and Target, to be honest. Just happens to be that. But
Yeah.
the saucer and the cup have the Greek key going around it. So the person who picked it clearly, because my husband is Greek American and we are Greek Orthodox. It's also blue and yellow, which are both of our favorite colors.
Okay.
And just beautifully designed. And the thing I like the most about it that really hit me when we got it is the little handle that you pick it up with. It looks like a little wing.
Yeah.
And I felt like it represented us taking flight on this brand new excursion of marriage. And we will be celebrating that 40 years in September.
Wow.
We're both very excited about that.
Yeah.
Honestly, we'll probably be at the Greek festival because that's always when they have it. But it really, it's a very special pair for me, and I do use them, and that's why. I thought the person who picked it out thought that way too. I can't even remember who bought it, to be honest, but it just has a lot of meaning.
Yeah. Well, it's beautiful.
Thank
you for bringing that in for us to showcase and sharing the story behind that.
Everything tastes good in it.
Yeah. Well, and our tea that we're drinking today for our listeners is a berry white tea. I like it. Do you like it?
I do like it. It's got a little bit of sourness to it. That's the berry. It's not, when you say that, you think it's going to be sweet. And you look at it, and it's a beautiful, rich pink color, pinkish red color, but it has several notes that I can, raspberry specifically, and other berries of that nature, and I like it. But it's more on the sour side.
Yeah.
Is that common in white tea? I don't know.
No, I don't think so necessarily. I think it depends on what you mix in it. This, I do know a little fact here. White tea is very close to the original state of the tea plant. So again, there's lots of processing that goes behind teas. So this is most closely to the original state. And it's mostly from buds and immature tea leaves that are picked shortly before the buds have opened.
Oh.
So the flavor is characterized as lighter than most green or like black teas. So it's a lighter kind of tea. And actually, this tea, they said you can drink hot or cold.
Yeah. I can see it cold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we both like our Southern sweet tea, right?
Yes.
So we like our cold tea.
Yes.
We do. I can see about
hard to say about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and I'll describe for our listeners my teacup because I've been bringing one in for each of these. And so this is part of a larger set of china from my mother's side in South Dakota. My great-grandmother Hertha was originally from Germany and by way of Wisconsin. And so I don't really know a whole lot more other than this is part of an original china set that I received from my family. And through different moves, unfortunately, a lot of it got broken.
Oh, no.
But I've been using pieces of the broken plates, and I've made them into jewelry and picture frames and things like that and given it to other family members so that they have a part of our history of our family that way, too. So even if I don't have the plates anymore.
That's wonderful. I'm the person that everybody gives their china to because I keep stuff. I'm very sentimental. And my mom's family was from Germany, and I have my grandmother's china that was brought over from Germany that my mom had, and that it was really a toss-up between this and that teacup.
Okay.
So we have something in common.
Yeah. Yep. And not very many people, I don't think, collect a lot of teacups and things these days, but I've acquired quite a few, so it's kind of fun to be able to showcase that through this podcast.
Oh, yes. Yes. And my little granddaughters love to try them out in different teacups.
Okay, so you let them use your teacups.
Oh, yeah. Now, they don't use the Limoges. If they do, yes, nobody's broken anything. They're so careful, and it's very sweet.
That's great. And I love that because you're also, again, intentionality. We're going to talk about that a little bit today, right? It's intentionality of bringing your grandkids into talking about having tea parties and that sort of thing.
Yes.
So one of the things, again, we're kind of reflecting on concepts from the book. This idea of path to finding oneself is kind of a central theme in the book. And I'll just pull out an excerpt from the author here. When we make our own discoveries, there is an organic element of surprise that signifies the Spirit is leading us. It's a harder path, but it also makes things your own. So many times our parents kind of develop beliefs or habits for our lives. And I'm just curious, maybe what are some examples of ways that people have formed your path?
Well, from a very early time, when you're thinking about your parents, certainly they had lots of influences, some good, some bad. And I think in terms of bringing them forward in my life, I have been very deliberate about losing the bad things. I grew up in the 60s. I was born in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and my parents, for whatever reason, because they're Midwestern, we lived in the South in Augusta, Georgia, but they're not from the South. They were just very racist. And I grew up in a family that just had very, very racist beliefs. And I was the oddball. Even then, got in trouble all the time for saying things and telling them not to say things. And, that wasn't good. But for whatever reason, I knew that wasn't right. And it just didn't sit well with me. And, I'm punished a whole lot for disagreeing on that subject, among others. And the other one was they were very, very strong disciplinarians to a degree that I feel like was inappropriate. And at the time, you don't know. You don't know what you don't know. You only know what's happening at your house. So as time has gone on, it is something, I've discovered that really was a terrible thing. And it does definitely has been something I took forward as a parent. I never spanked my children. There are different ways you can discipline. They weren't perfect, but they sure didn't deserve to be hit. So that's been a very deliberate thing as an adult, as a mom, and now, of course, a grandmother. And my children would never do that to their children. So I'm trying to break that cycle because that's a cycle that does not need to continue in anyone's family.
Right.
But on the positive side, my parents supported the arts, and I took ballet for a long, long time, over 20 years, and they were very, very supportive of my little sister and I. So those are things that now my granddaughters take ballet, and I am, oh my gosh, I just today got some pictures that were taken of this recital that was just recently, and it is so much fun because my girls were like, do we have to do this? Can we quit? And of course they didn't, I'm like, sure, they'd rather do sports. But I've got 3 little girls right now that are loving it, and I take them and I pay for it, and it's just wonderful. So I'm able to take that forward and introduce that to their lives. And of course their parents come, their dad sitting there at a ballet recital just stop by and do it. It's very, very sweet. But, other examples, I have had so many role models at different times in my life, and it is just incredible how a role model, I just believe so much that mentors can really change your life. They can either introduce you to something you never thought you'd get to do or just believe in you. To me, that's the biggest thing is people that believe in you and think you can do something that you would never dreamed of. So in that regard, I've been so lucky to have had people that have seen something in me and pushed me and encouraged me and given me the responsibility to succeed.
Yeah.
And I just am so grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, and now you're in a role where you also are doing that for others, too.
Yes. My dad was a big volunteer. And at the house, he would take me with him. It's Salvation Army. I mean, there were many, many things. But mostly it was with people that needed help. And, I can remember as a little bitty kid ringing the bell or going to people's house to take meals and things. And, the thing about volunteering, if you don't teach your kids how to give to someone else, they don't learn that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, most of the time, it is something, they don't end up being volunteers when they get to be grown if they haven't been introduced to something in their younger years to even consider, not consider giving to someone else and not being just centered on themselves. And I certainly see this in my adult life of people. It's like they never dream of doing something for someone else or spending time. Yeah. But I honestly think it's in my blood because I'm a chronic volunteer. But my youngest son gave me a coffee cup one time, teacup, whatever.
Yeah.
And it said, "Stop me before I volunteer again." In these giant words. So I thought, okay, I get it. Of course, I drugged my children to every single thing that they were able to do. So they have had the opportunity. And now, I'm watching my kids at their children's school and doing things that, that are familiar to me. And I'm just so proud because I think that's very important.
Yeah. Well, and for our listeners that aren't familiar with the role of a regent, that is a volunteer position as well. Do you want to kind of describe what that commitment looks like for our listeners?
I'll tell you. I've been on the Board of Regents 15 years, which is a really long time. You are selected by the governor. So Governor Bredesen, Governor Haslam, and Governor Lee have all selected me. And honestly, when the lady first called me, someone I knew from Governor Bredesen's office, and asked me if I would serve, I didn't know what it was.
Right.
I said, "TB, what is that?" Yeah, tell her that.
Yeah.
I absolutely said, "Of course." This is when the chronic volunteer comes in.
Yeah.
I would love to. I would love to do that. And then I called my husband and said, "What is that?" Because it just had not come across my radar screen. My kids were little, that kind of stuff.
Sure.
But they weren't that little, but they weren't college age or anything. So but God had his plan. I was scared to death. I thought, what in the world do I have to offer to this group? But then over time, honestly, it became very clear that I had a different thing to offer. My family fell apart. My father went bankrupt, and I was on my own from the time I was 19 years old. So I had to drop out of college and ended up finishing a long time later. But it really gave me an opportunity to see how many students have that. And I had that experience. It took me 10 years working and going to school and working 2 jobs and paying for it because they didn't have all that money back then. You didn't even ask. There wasn't those opportunities. So the best thing about that, though, is that I owned it. And you better believe I made good grades when I was paid for it.
Well, sure.
Yeah. But then it just became so clear to me what my place was and having a real understanding of the food insecurity, of trying to figure out how to do the hours that were required when you have to do things to pay for it. And I didn't even have kids. So, people really had a hard time. I lived in Atlanta and was so grateful. I worked as a secretary in a law firm, a legal secretary, but I was very close to Georgia State. So I could walk to Georgia State when I finally got settled and was able to do that at night. And I made it. It was, I would not marry my husband before I had my degree because here he was a lawyer.
Yeah.
And so I graduated in August 1985. I should have graduated in 1977. So, and I started in 1973 college. So it was a long time. Yeah. But it was so fun because my last course was not offered, of course. I was an English major. And what happened is I went and talked to the professor, and I told him all about it. And he said, "You're going to write your course. This is your last course. You do this." And I did. And so I got to graduate. And then we got married in September. But it was one of the happiest days in my life. Still very emotional about it.
Yeah.
And every graduation I go to, I cry. But it's something I did completely for myself by myself,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody can ever take it away from you.
Yeah.
So I am so big on education. It was no question that my kids were going to college and all of that kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of my biggest single individual accomplishments because it was hard.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing that, because I think that's really important for other people to know the story of someone who's serving in a leadership role for higher education in the state, that you have been in the trenches too. You're a real person. You've struggled, but also as a female, you've persevered through those challenges, and you took on new ventures, and you weren't afraid to do that, right? Because fear, I think, a lot of times holds people back.
Absolutely.
So
being downtown Atlanta at night is fear. That's a scary place. Yeah, I didn't have a car. I rode MARTA to home and then walked to my apartment. So I was stupid, is what it was. But seriously, it at the time, I'm going to graduate from college. That was all there was to it. It was no big hoopla or anything. It was just one, like Pat Summitt used to say, put one foot in front of the other. And I didn't even know her then. But that's exactly what I did. It was like, nobody talks about, well, I don't have any money for food, or I don't have a car and stuff like that. I mean, you just do what you had to do.
Yeah, you figured it out.
Yep.
Well, that leads me to another question, because we talk in the book about kind of the courage to start new ventures. And of course, Becca Stevens founded Thistle Farms, which, is helping women to kind of get back on their feet. One of the things that she mentions in the book is living a dream is much harder than talking about a dream. And so I guess one of the things that you've mentioned, some of this already, kind of key life lessons you've had to learn the hard way, and moments where maybe you started on a path, had no idea what you were getting yourself into, and you kind of persevered through those challenges. Can you maybe share some of those other kind of key life lessons that you've learned?
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. The teacup is always half full, or if not all the way full. And, I just never think I can't. I'm very stupid is the right word, really, but I'm very optimistic. And if I don't know if y'all ever remember a television show that this guy, I can't remember what the name of it is, Quantum Leap, maybe the name?
Yeah.
And he'd go to sleep, and he'd wake up and he'd be a brain surgeon, or he'd wake up and he'd be a goat herd or something like that. That's what I thought. Hey, I'm going to be, I haven't tried brain surgery.
Yeah, right.
But seriously, I have always had a lot of misplaced confidence. The fear came in maybe a little bit later when I'm saying, I really don't know what I'm doing. I've had every job I've ever had. I did not have the credentials at all. People just hired me from the interview. And I only lied one time when I told someone I could type. And I did not take typing in high school because I went to a private high school.
Yeah.
And they didn't offer typing. And I had no idea, there were no computers. I mean, why would you need to type? And even in college, you didn't have to do that when I was in Queens. So the funny thing about that is I said, yes, I can. Yes. They didn't ask me to take a typing test for no apparent reason. And I did. I typed. I just taught myself how to type. It started out slow because I was just the investigator's assistant, secretary, and the receptionist, all that stuff. But this was a big law firm in Atlanta. And eventually went to work for one of the partners. I mean, it's just I could not type. So I don't recommend that, but that's an example of going, yes, I'm going to do it. And so I've had stuff in the airline business. I have had the craziest jobs you have ever imagined. And somebody just said, no, it's okay. You can learn. And I understand that a little better now. And one of the things I always say in graduations is attitude, hard work, and gratitude. Those are the three things that got me where I am. It's not how smart I am. I mean, I'm pretty smart, but that's not it. And but people would rather have somebody with a good attitude than somebody who thinks they know everything, or they can teach you the skill unless it's like brain surgery.
Right.
But having a good attitude and hard work and being grateful will get you a long way. And I think that's been the three things in my life that I try to pass on that have worked for me. And of course, God has guided everything.
Well, and I imagine that's just something now you can kind of reflect back on. Did you always kind of think that, or was it just now you're kind of having this realization now later in life, I guess?
Well, more so now, but as things begin to happen, like, as I got a little older and had been through all this stuff with my father and losing, it was just a big fat mess. But if all that hadn't happened, all that bad stuff, I wouldn't be who I am.
Right.
I am very tough. I am a survivor of whatever. There are just a lot of things. And I guess probably in my 30s, I started going, this is, as people were trusting me and believing in me, I knew that wasn't me. I really think God had a real plan for me that I just said, okay. And now I laugh at people that talk about their plans and all of this stuff. I'm like, I hate to tell you this, but God's plans are so much bigger and greater than we can even imagine. And I know it's true. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
And my life is a perfect example of that. I don't know how he's helping anybody else because he spends all of his time trying to keep me spread.
Well, and so, obviously we're talking about stories from the past and how you have freedom by moving beyond that. You've mentioned that already. We have dreams. Everyone has these visions and dreams. And the great thing about talking about tea as a metaphor is like in the book, they talk about how tea, again, the intentionality of sitting with others and like having that time to maybe reflect and think about things because it's just you and the teacup and maybe that moment and spending that time. Do you have, when you think, again, bad things aside in our past, but did you have like goals and dreams that maybe have been difficult to achieve? Like when you think back, were there times where, you had some barriers that you were facing? You mentioned that you just always kept taking on the next thing. But, what advice, I guess, would you have for others when they've got these dreams and these visions and they're just finding it really challenging?
Yeah. The first thing I'm going to say is believe in yourself, but whatever you're going to undertake, whether it's being a parent, being a wife or husband, being a ditch digger, being, anything, hard work, a good attitude and hard work. Anybody can do that. You don't have to have a certain IQ. Whatever your job is, if you are really got a, good attitude, yes, do everything you're supposed to do and more, and then be so appreciative of it. I think that's the first thing. But, along the way, there have been some times I'm very trusting, unless somebody does something that I can't be. So I don't immediately think, oh, I don't know about this person. At least I used to not. But there have been a couple of work situations that honestly, one example that was probably the most frustrating was being given the opportunity to look at a different way to do something and to create a different way to achieve a certain goal. So pulled together all the professionals, and there were a lot of them in the organization, to talk about this and to work through what can we do? What are the best practices? How can we do it? And I love doing these kinds of things. I mean, we worked with everything from Legos to, just anything to just open people's minds. And they actually went along with it. At first, it was like, what are we going to do? This, hocus pocus stuff. But we came up with just a fantastic way to deal with these certain things, and it was to do with children. And when the time came for it to be presented, not one person from the administrative staff showed up. It crushed me, but it also they lost the trust of every single person that had participated in that. Not because it wasn't adopted, but they didn't even show up. And in situations like that, I was pretty mad, pretty upset. I didn't go tell. It's unusual for me not to go up there and tell them how I feel, but because I have no problem doing that.
Yeah.
But I didn't. I was so astounded that I didn't. But it really took me back and made me think. Sometimes that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And sometimes you trust people that maybe you shouldn't, and don't do it more than once.
Right. Learn from that.
Learn from it and think about that. It's the world,
It is going to happen.
That's going to happen.
Yeah.
Their dreams are going to be crushed. People are going to, and you just got to get back up and say, okay, what's the next thing?
Right.
Things like that.
Take it as an opportunity to reinvent yourself in some way, maybe.
And definitely not, I'm not saying that in a way that, I got up the next morning and Pollyanna was right. No, it was not the case at all.
Right.
But I did learn, and that was the most devastating, I guess you could say, because I was pretty far along in my career and had a lot of support.
Right.
So.
Well, and you've mentioned this now a couple times too, is about your kind of faith, your belief.
Yeah.
What does your spiritual journey look like?
And that's why I say God's in charge. I grew up in a Methodist family. We were pretty much dropped off at church, Sunday school, and they came back and got us. So it was not a family thing, but it was, checking that box, making sure my little sister and I, my brother and I have a brother and sister a whole lot older than me, so they were out of the house. But my little sister and I went to Sunday school and all that stuff. And as I kept getting older, I loved it. I was going back and doing training union and all this kind of stuff. Well, not that's Baptist, but bottom line, very involved.
Yeah.
And I started dating a Catholic guy. His name was Danny, too.
Oh, that must have been Annie and you see.
Isn't that funny? Sweetest boy. His church was across the street from mine. And I loved his parents. They had 6 boys and 1 girl. So they were thrilled to have girlfriends in the house and have girls. His parents were fantastic. Always so kind to me and part of their family. And that went out, this was several years. And it was my first real serious boyfriend experience. My parents, they didn't hate him. They just, you can't date a Catholic. Blah, blah, blah. It was just awful, and their parents are never going to accept you. Well, of course, on their side, they were
very accepting.
They never acted the way that their parents described that. So as time went on, it was sort of funny because all the 4 kids, my brother's family became Catholic, and of course, very grown up. Their whole family, very, very dedicated, and my other sisters did, things with their faith. And so when I was in my young 20s, still going through school, I was trying to find where I wanted to be. I decided that the Methodist Church was not the place. I wanted something more structured and maybe just more down to the roots type of thing. So I was visiting churches, and then I started dating my husband. And he took me to church in Atlanta, at the Church of the Annunciation. And I loved it. Even though the first day they were speaking a whole lot of Greek, and it was all the I call them the big hats, all the hierarchy was there. Of course, he didn't explain one word to me, but it was in English. But what I like about it, and what I feel like this was the easiest decision I ever had to make, because I converted, in fact, today is 40 years.
Okay.
Yes. And it was what I was supposed to be. And the reason is this was the first Christian church. It started with the apostles on Pentecost, which was this past Sunday in our church. And I like the timeline of that. There's nothing's been changed. Now, sometimes I don't like the rules, but at least they're not changing every 5 minutes. And that is what I needed and still need. And it's been the perfect place for me. My kids have been involved. They each married a person that was not an Orthodox Christian. All of them have converted. I'd never said a word to them. It has nothing to do with me. I'm not in charge of their salvation. But it is the greatest thing I think that I can say about my family is that we all are the same religion and very involved in our church. And it's just been a great walk of faith. So when I retired, my number one thing on my list was to get more involved in my church because I had more time than I have. And it has just been, in fact, I'm leading the stewardship drive.
Of course you are. You're volunteering again.
The worst job in the church and doing a new directory. So
yeah,
that's the second worst.
There you go. You get all the good, fun volunteer tasks.
Yeah.
Well, and you're talking a lot about kind of the connection with the church, and that's obviously a community as well that supports you, and you support them obviously through your volunteering. But do you have other examples of how you maybe found community with other people and,
Yeah.
that is a sense of rejuvenation and healing, too, when you're part of a community.
Oh, absolutely. And, I'm just as guilty as anybody in getting too busy sometimes, even though I'm retired, to say, oh, I just don't have time. I don't have time to do it. And I cannot stand it when people say that to me. So I'm trying to learn. We all have the same 24 hours. It's how you choose to do it.
Yeah.
So this past week, and reading this book sort of reminded me how much I love to do this. My next door neighbor has had me over for tea many times, and we just sit there and talk. So last week I decided to do a real tea party. And I mean, pulled out the china. I cleaned my silver pots, teapots and stuff, cleaned the other silver, scones, everything that was supposed to be at a tea. And they said, do we have to wear white gloves? For goodness sakes. I said, no. But it was 2 hours of such great conversation, just like women do, catching up on things that we wanted to talk about, and even that there's no one else to talk about. Sometimes things women talk about, men don't want to talk about that. And it's sort of it's a real personal relationship. So we're going to be doing that more often, but it felt good. We all had a good time, and we're sort of engaged more with the summer being here. I definitely intentionally do tea parties with my little granddaughters. I have 5 granddaughters, and they love it. I love it because, I use a tablecloth on their little table, and I use real china, and I let them pour their own. It's just water because they're too little to drink tea, but I usually use like a creamer. Each of them get a creamer, and that's their little pot stuff. And they love playing with the water, to be honest. But, and the little tiny sandwiches and stuff can be kiddie food, but still fun. So we do that quite often, and they love to do that. It's something as a child that I like to do, didn't get to do as much, but it is very, very fun. And I've drank tea since I was a kid. I grew up in a family in Augusta, Georgia, and my mom made the best sweet tea. It was sweet.
Of course.
And I drank it all the time. Yeah. All the time. Even, as an adult, going until it really got to be clear that sugar was not that good for you.
Rotting your teeth.
And I honestly would rather chew my sugar, to be it's like, not going to do that anymore. I go to the Crystal and get their sweet tea, which had the best sweet tea. But I've always liked hot tea, too.
Yeah.
Really, like to try it, and I'm a big tea drinker. So.
Well, it's great that you're kind of passing on a tradition, a ritual with your grandkids, really. Hopefully they'll carry that on.
I hope so. But what I have learned through this book is so helpful in thinking about that connection between tea and relationships. I loved that, tea and community, and all the things that she's written about. I felt like it was very on point, and I can feel myself adopting a more strategic and definitive way of doing that and enjoying it. I really like that. I've been sitting on my deck. I'm into my garden constantly in my yard, flowers and stuff, and it's like the perfect world. So, it is relaxing.
Yeah.
It puts you in a place that's relaxing. You get at the teacup and all of a sudden it's like, your shoulders relax and you just think good thoughts. It sounds so silly, doesn't it? But it's true for me.
Yeah, it's a trigger for us to think about taking time for ourselves and our thoughts, maybe in that moment.
Yes.
Or spending it with another person and sharing those thoughts. And well, speaking of that, I mean, it's been great to sit and talk with you and have this moment with you over tea.
Yes, very good tea.
Yeah. As we conclude today's podcast, I want to share a thought again from the authors, kind of like a little toast as we move forward. My hope is that you find blends that leave a good taste in your mouth, mind, and soul as you're led down an old and grounded spiritual path.
Yes.
So thank you for sharing some reflections on your life and your spiritual journey over a cup of tea.
A cup of tea. And it's just been a delight to do this. And we've been friends for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's about time.
I know. Thank you for taking the time.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to this edition of From the VC's Bookshelf, brought to you by TBR, the College System of Tennessee, powering the state's economy and changing the lives of thousands of graduates, starting successful careers each year. To learn more about upcoming book selections or to register to attend discussions live, visit tbr.edu/bookshelf.